Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this special webinar. This Saturday is International Women's Day. And did you know that International Women's Day has been celebrated for over 100 years, raising awareness of equality and advancement of women? It's been marked since 1911, when it was first held in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. The day was celebrated to promote women's rights to vote, work, and hold public office. So the theme of this year is Accelerate Action. Data from the World Economic Forum tells us that at the current rate of progress, it will actually take until 2158 to reach full gender parity. That's an awfully far away. Now, we also know that the challenges for women with disability in achieving equality can actually be even greater. So today I'm actually joined by Paralympian and disability advocate and good friend of ours, Karni Liddell, to discuss equality for women and for people with disability. So welcome, Karni.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to reconnect again.
Yeah. Great. Well, look, let me tell the folks a little bit about you before we jump in and hear from you. So for those who don't know Karni, I know some of you will, but Karni is a former Paralympic swimmer, a world record holder, public speaker, including a TED Talk, a TV presenter, a member of the Queensland Premier's Domestic and Family Violence Council, and is a domestic and family violence specialist and trainer. She holds a clinical master's in social work, go social workers. And of course, and very importantly, she is a mum as well. So thank you for joining us, Karni. I thought we might start with, given your array of achievements, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your early life growing up.
Oh, early life. Well,
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm 46. I just turned 46 on, was it Saturday? And
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I guess when you have a disability and you can't really see that I'm sitting on a wheelchair at the moment, always try and get the wheelchair in somehow, but you can't really with these.
Otherwise, you've got to tip the camera down, and yeah, it's a bit weird.
Look, everyone, there it is. I blurred it out.
We believe you.
I wish I could blur it out when I'm out and about, just because I guess for my everyday life is that it's very rare that I'm not asked about my disability, whether it's trying to get a coffee, take my kid to school.
Yeah.
And it's something that people are either intrigued about or feel like they want to know or need to know or should be able to ask that question. And for someone like me, I was born with my disability. I was born with a muscle wasting disease. And, all those years ago, my muscle disease at the time was diagnosed as spinal muscular atrophy. It was very much a clinical diagnosis back then. And then when I hit my 20s and 30s, it became easier to diagnose SMA. As anyone out there with SMA would know, is that it's now just a blood test. And from there, I've then tried to get diagnosed. And it's been a very, very long, arduous, challenging, frustrating process for anyone out there with any kind of rare genetic disease. Yeah. And currently I'm diagnosed, I would say 99.2% diagnosed as having congenital tendinopathy, which is a brand new muscle disease. And I guess when I think about early life, I don't remember anything about the diagnosis or what happened, but I guess the older I got, the more I heard people talking about my diagnosis, whether it was the press or media or other people talking about, the very clinical black and white medical textbook definition. And as a mother now, it's a very loaded word as a mother, but I certainly understand what it's like to be around specialists and doctors and allied health professionals diagnosing and talking about your child. So I guess my parents were told that I had this disease, and not a lot has changed around how we diagnose, unfortunately and fortunately at the same time. It's very much very this is what we think is going to happen, and then it usually is the worst case scenario, I would suggest, which is you progressively get weaker and you have to use a wheelchair, and muscle diseases, typically speaking, mine affects my whole body, so lungs, heart, things like that. And I guess from growing up I was born in Rockhampton, the beef capital of Australia.
Beef capital. I
Beef.
thought that was Casina. Doesn't Casina
How
have
dare
beef week
you?
in New South
Can't
Wales?
believe
I don't want to put some controversial kind of Queensland, New South Wales thing out there.
I know, right? Well, they do say that the beef capital, but who has the beef week? Who has
Yeah,
beef week every
exactly.
few years? That's
Exactly.
Rockhampton,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
I
Yeah.
was Miss Beef Week 1996, I'd have you know.
Oh, wow. Got your crown
I can't
or your
believe no,
horns
it
or
was an
something?
Akubra. Yeah, it was an Akubra. There was no crown. But you know, growing up in a smaller regional rural town like Rockhampton with a disability, you know, you feel like you're the only person in the world, I guess, with that disability or with a disability. And yeah, I was just very fortunate that I discovered disabled sport by the age of 8. So that really changed my life in so many ways, not just because I became a Paralympian. It was probably because I got to be around other people just like me and, you know, feeling that part of a majority rather than minority, which is a magical feeling.
Yeah, and look, it would be remiss of me not to zone in on your super amazing winning, not the beef week crown, although I'm sure that is important, but winning medals at a Paralympics. That must have been amazing. I understand you've been at 2 Paralympics. Maybe you could give us a little bit about what you remember from that. Talk us about what it's like, because I don't think it's a rare experience for anyone to get to be that good at sport to compete at such a massive world stage.
Yeah, look, I was doing a few laps yesterday actually, and I didn't feel like a Paralympic swimmer or a world record. I can tell you that. But one thing I do feel like when I do get in the water, it's interesting because you don't realize how much you feel different until you don't, if that makes sense. Like yesterday, I got into the pool and did a few laps in front of other people that were there, and I felt strong and
Yeah.
good and not disabled. It's like that time you can turn it off and you feel, yeah, you just feel capable. And I think that's really, really important, not just for kids, even though,
Yeah.
you know, we all want kids and my kid to feel like they're strong and good at anything. You know, I'm always trying to find something for Kai, you know, to sink his teeth into and love. And for me, even at my age, it's still important to be able to feel like you can do things on your own and you are strong and capable. So yeah, it was, I guess for me, the Paralympics was never about the medals. It was never about the achievements or all that sort of stuff. It was always about, I was just so driven to be around. Like I'm a social creature and a social butterfly. And I guess it was that going from school feeling like, you know, you got to be wary of where you're going and you can't get up the stairs and you can't do this and you can't that. And all of a sudden you come into this world where everyone's the same and you can do things and you can feel a certain way. And I guess that's what I craved the most about Paralympics. But Sydney 2000, that particular Paralympics was life-changing for all of us. It changed Australia as well in so many
Yeah.
ways. You know, we topped the medal tally back then. And it was really the first time that the public could show up for us, and they did. And I really hope leading into Brisbane 2032, we have the same momentum around the Paralympics, even though obviously Paralympics now is much bigger and famous and they're all making money now, which I'm totally fine about.
Good for them, right? Good for them.
Look, yeah, good on them for being millionaires. Yay. But look, it is incredible to think we were part of a movement that actually did change so many people's lives with disability. And it had nothing to do with the sport, really. I mean, we're obviously good at sport, but at the same time, what I think about now, do I remember the races? No, but do I remember the letters from all the kids around the world and you know, faxes coming in from all these parents and just, it was just incredible time.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm sure you are particularly talented at sport, all of you. I don't think you get to that level without being very good. But it sounds like it's just been such a powerful experience in terms of that kind of that environment where you are with other people who you can find a common identity with, and that the power in that gives you kind of that sense of strength. But you talked earlier about actually as a young child growing up in Rocky where you were actually isolated and you didn't have that kind of visibility. maybe talk to us about maybe some of those challenges that as not just a young person with a disability, but as a young woman with a disability, what challenges you faced and how you approach them and how you use them to get, continue to go forward in your life and become so successful.
Yeah, look, it's again, I wish I could sit here in 2025 and say we've figured it out. And there is a lot of things that have changed for the better, but there is also that really isolating still experience that most of us people with disabilities unfortunately still have to contend with. And I think it's really important to talk about it, because as much as everyone wants us to be positive and say that the NDIS and integration has definitely changed our lives, which it has, of course, but at the same time, I think right now we're probably a bit too disconnected again. I think that people with disabilities, we've got ourselves into these situations with the NDIS where we've really had to sort of get ourselves back into that fight mode again. And I always say I've been living on fight mode for 46 years. I reckon for the first 2 years of the NDIS coming in, for me anyway, when I first had, my first chance to have funding for the first time, I was 37, 38 years of age. And from going from nothing to having the chance to have someone be able to be your arms and legs when it comes to mothering or getting groceries or, getting on a plane, was completely life-changing and a chance for me to turn my fight mode off and actually be a human and think about other things rather than always thinking ahead and trying to figure out just how to do the basics.
Yeah.
And I think a young woman, old woman, whatever you want to call anyone, I think that the fact that we, as people with disabilities right now, are in a situation where we're fighting just for the NDIS and keeping our packages. And right now I'm going through having to reapply for the NDIS. And it just reminds me again that we're still in that mode. I'm sitting in an electric wheelchair. I've been to, obviously a few Paralympic Games. I was the NDIS ambassador. And for me, I always think if I'm fighting, if I'm having to reapply and find an OT to prove that I have a muscle wasting disease, which is not going to be cured anytime soon. And if it is, guess what? I'll be the first person to say,
yeah, you'll be lining up.
I don't want the funding. Is that, I guess for me, I think if it happens to me, then what's happening to other people without power and privilege and or the capacity to be able to really fight hard for yourself. And and I think it's really important that we talk about it more at the moment, because we are all in that boat and we are, a bit scared right now.
Yeah. Look, that's really great to hear your reflections, but also kind of a bit sobering for all of us to, we, as an organisation that supports people with disability and a lot of staff that work with people, we kind of see it from our perspective. But, it is hard to hear that the challenges that have been there are kind of getting a little bit more tricky. And I've heard similar stories about how the NDIS has been so life-changing for people, but now there's kind of this moment of having to reprove disability and, make that case. And you're right, those people that don't have those network support, resources to work through the system, it can be really tricky for them. I wonder, given our workforce, we have lots of support workers, we have lots of people who really have that frontline role, particularly with people in their homes, in terms of supporting them. And I just wondered if there's something that you might want to talk to them about around some messages, or for your lived experience perspective, and in the context of where the NDIS, whether you had anything that you could, have a chat to our kind of our frontline workers about lived experience and what that means, and what that means for that relationship with the workers that do support you.
Yeah, look, this is what I like to say. I mean, that's why I'm sort of being as honest as I am, is because everyone that works with us, like, everyone that works at your organisation or has that capacity to be able to be that, like, for example, for me, if someone came along today from your organisation, if I called your organisation and someone answered the phone and said, yep, don't know what to do, let's figure it out together, I'll help, with paperwork, or being that person that fights for you would be completely and utterly amazing, because there is, everyone always thinks there's someone we can call to do stuff, whether it's getting ready for the cyclone. You know, everyone's telling me, I'll call this person to figure out how your generators work, or do this, you know, surely there's someone you can call. No, there's not. And that's really what we're hoping from service providers like yourself, is that in terms of being able to be that head nodder, you know, being that person that goes, yep, get it, don't know what to do, but let's work it together, and not coming at us in terms of, you know, wanting more paperwork from us or wanting more things from us. Is just being able to, I guess, be that person that takes it over for a minute. You know, like every time I go on a plane or have to go on a holiday or go anywhere, there's always so much to it. There's always an hour on the phone, and there's always a fight, and there's always, you know, people asking really personal questions, and or worse, people calling us risky, you know, like, oh, well, that sounds risky. I don't know if you can do that, because, and I guess that misconception that we're the riskiest person or people in the room to support, serve, or employ is without question the most disabling thing about having a disability. And that really does follow us everywhere, you know, whether it's applying for a job or whatever it is. The fact that people think that about us is completely untrue. And like service providers have that beautiful chance right now. Like at the beginning of the NDIS, when I went around and talked to service providers and participants, I mean, I don't even like the word participant, because I'm not participating. I'm a customer with a lot of money to spend. I would love to be able to spend it with people that can actually change my life for the better in any way, shape, or form. But you know, from my perspective, is that when we come to you, we may be on fight mode. And I guess it's not easy for you either when we're heightened, or the parent is heightened, and you're the person on the end of the phone, or you're the person sitting across from us. And as soon as we know we can lower it, and you give us that chance to do it, to turn it off for a minute, you will then see the real us, the real true, you know, person that's not trying to fight or prove or beg or, you know. And that's really important right now, going into this next phase of the NDIS, or even moving with what's going to happen the next few years with in general cost of living crisis, is that you all don't realize. I hope you realize how much that you do have the power to change our lives just by being that head nodder, you know, saying, yep, great idea. Because that happened to me when I was very young. You know, when I said I wanted to be a swimmer, when there was nobody talking about Paralympics, there certainly wasn't anyone talking about disabled sport. And with a muscle disease, all throughout my swimming career, and even now when I watch the Paralympics, I'll see that the people that are competing for Australia, there's very few people with muscle wasting diseases doing it. Now, that doesn't make me special at all. It just means that there's been a disconnect with the messaging out there to every single person with a muscle wasting disease, that you can play disabled sport. You absolutely can swim. You can play wheelchair basketball. There's classifications for you, and we are desperately in need of that. So I guess for me, I don't know how it happened back in the 80s and 90s, that I found sporting wheelies and I went along, and mum and dad nodded their heads, and luckily for me, that pathway was really quite simple. And we have to bring that back now, because, you know, last year in Paris 2024 Paralympics, Australia had its worst performing Paralympic team in history. So we came ninth. Now, this is not me saying anything negative about the team. What it is me saying, okay, we came ninth. We won in Sydney 2000. What's happened the last 25 years with extra funding, integration, mainstream? So now, you know, if you want to be a swimmer with a disability in Australia, you fall under Swimming Australia, for example. So 8-year-old me went from Rockhampton, coming last at everything, you know, feeling weak, absolutely showing no signs of being a good athlete, arriving at Chandler Pool at the age of 8, winning a blue ribbon for the 25 metres freestyle. Every single kid got the same blue ribbon. I did it in 4 minutes and 56 seconds. I certainly did not show any incredible signs of being, you know, a Paralympic swimmer.
Yeah.
Again, that word wasn't common, but there was no real choice for me in terms of I had to go to disabled sport.
Yeah.
And the best thing about that was from there, I then had this incredible opportunities. Everywhere I went, it was only people with disabilities. So when I went to junior development squad camps or nationals, it was just people with disabilities. And then, of course, mainstream happened and integration happened. And now 8-year-old me from Rockhampton would have to go to Queensland swimming state championships, for example.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds lovely in theory, but when you have a severe disability like I do, so I'm an S6 swimmer, for example, or all limbs are affected, I don't believe that we should only be able to compete at that able-bodied level. I still believe we have to figure out a way for me to be able to, or people like me, to be able to play sport or do things around other people with severe disabilities, so I have the chance to feel good and
Yeah.
strong and powerful. There's always going to be a place for integration and having that mainstream environment, but we've gotten rid of everything else.
Yeah.
And I still seek out going to sporting wheelies or spinal life to go to the group class, and I'm there with 20-year-old kids or 10-year-old kids. And I turn into a different person. I come in, I want to win, I train hard, not in a good way, because then I've got to, I'm 3 months like one of the physio, oh, my shoulder.
As the body gets older.
Yeah. But the difference between me there compared to me going to an able-bodied gym is completely different. I walked into a Pilates class 2 days ago at an able-bodied gym. I've got to go up the steps because there's no ramp. And then I've got to say to the physio or the Pilates instructor, hi, like in 2 minutes, I have a disability. And then she's like, oh, well, what can you and can't you do? You got like 30 seconds, right? So then you get on the Pilates reformer and everyone's doing things that you can't do. And all of a sudden you feel different and you feel, again, that's fine. That's the world we live in. But I think we have to think about ways. And this is why I was so excited when you got back in contact with me, because I feel like we've never been at a better chance right now to look at the Paralympic team, not because everything's about Paralympics. No way. It's because the Paralympic team is a mirror to the disability community.
Yeah.
So if I go to get a job or go to, I don't know, Dreamworld and try and get on a ride at Dreamworld or get on a plane, if people in Australia think that every single person with a disability should be a Paralympian, which is the most physical thing you can ever do in your life. So we go to the Paralympics in Paris for those 2 weeks. We're celebrated. Everyone expects us to do it. We watch wheelchair rugby, which is quad rugby. We watch quadriplegics do things that, and then they come back to Australia and they can't get on a plane and they can't get a job. So what's going wrong there? Why are we expecting people to be able to do that, but then we can't be a social worker, or we can't, go to a yoga class, or we can't, go on a Dreamworld ride? And I think that if we can really be very, very honest about this and look at it and go, we've got 7 years till Brisbane 2032. How do we make sure that every single person with a disability in Australia feels like there is an option for them in terms of being around other people with disabilities if they want to experience it? Because otherwise you can't really learn how to be disabled. Like if I didn't go to those disability competitions, I don't believe I'd be the person I am today. I truly don't. And I mean confidence-wise. I mean like ring someone and say, what do you reckon about this? And who should I go to for this? So I think it's really important to try and figure out a way to get us back into that community feel. But the Paralympics, again, we look at the fact that we are 9th in the world for that. We're the most unemployed group in the country, and Australia hasn't really changed when it comes to employment of people with disability. I think we sit about 21 out of 29 OECD nations. And this is not me saying, please, negative, negative, negative. It's saying that what's the point of me having an NDIS package if I can't get out the front door and be a human? Like, I don't want to be stuck in this SDA unit with, my great wheelchair, my support workers, if I can't get across the road out the front. There's no ramps around Kangaroo Point and there's no lifts down to the river, or I can't get a job. So it's really important that, I guess, people like yourself look at us and go, all right, let's get the NDIS stuff figured out, which is hard enough. And then once that's done, let's really think about something we can do in terms of making you feel like a human, because everybody needs a purpose. And I certainly cannot live off my NDIS package. I can't pay for food, my kids' schooling, traveling. So I think in a weird way, the NDIS has made us again into a community of people that people only think about us in terms of funding. They got the NDIS, they're okay. No, we're not okay. We need a job. And, disability organisations like yourself, you have to look at your own employees and go, how many employees have we got here with a disability? If we don't have a lot of people with disabilities working for us, then why do we expect Westpac to do it? And then really make a dent with that 21st out of 29 OECD nations by Brisbane 2032. Not only do we want to be better than 9th and have that team full of severely disabled people with high support needs, muscle diseases, quadriplegics, because that's why we're losing. We have no one in those low classes. The only way to do that as well is to make sure by Brisbane 2032, Australia is in the top 10 employers, the country itself. We should be in the top 10 when it comes to employment of people with a disability. There's no excuse anymore. And once we start doing it, then we'll realize how easy it is to do, because there's nothing about me that needs anything from you. If I'm going to come be a social worker for you, I've got the degree, I've got the wheelchair, I've got the car, I've got the hoist. I'm guessing you're accessible.
Well, and we do provide social work services from lots of our Queensland sites in particular. So
exactly. So it should be just a nod of the head. It should be like, okay, great. And making us feel like we can, don't have to get 10 degrees to getting a job. We should be able to just do one degree, one whatever, and be able to be seen as an amazing addition to the company, not God, we need job access. Oh no, what are we going to do? What have you got? No, let us just be social workers, or let us just be whatever we want to be. That we're trained to do, and then you'll see a change, and then you'll also see the NDIS doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Wow, you've given us lots to think about in that. Some really challenging things around that whole mainstreaming concept, right? That's really interesting reflections on the implications of the community of disability.
And some people with disabilities will come at me and go, oh, I want to be mainstream. And you know what? Absolutely. When I was swimming back in the day, in the 90s and the early 2000s, we did have to go to the able-bodied swimming nationals every year. And we did the multi-class, and that's why you see the multi-class races. You don't see S1 female, male, 50 freestyle, S2, blah, blah. And I knew that I had to go to that every year, but I also knew that I had 10 other events around that I could go to feel, flick my hair, feel pretty, feel good, feel fun, feel myself. But when you have a milder disability, like an S10, for example, and you go to the able-bodied nationals, you can get in the warm-up pool and not get run over by 20 able-bodied swimmers. We were there in the 90s and early 2000s, but they turned the cameras off. They never showed us on TV. They turned the cameras off in the pool. All of that makes impact on our own confidence levels. And there should be, I would hope, and this is not just for sport, this is in general, we see it even at schools, don't we? We're seeing now that we've done a lot of mainstreaming and integration and inclusion for schools, which is absolutely amazing for those people that want to and can go to those schools. But there's a lot of people with disabilities that can't and don't want to. And we've sort of closed down that option because we thought everything was better being mainstreamed. Now, of course, if we could wave a magic wand today and make my son's school accessible. So he's at a mainstream school down the road here at Kangaroo Point. His classroom's up 3 flights of stairs. Now, I'm in a wheelchair, yes, I'm the mother, but he's up 3 flights of stairs. So I can't do anything with that. I can't go to his classroom. I can't volunteer. And that impacts my son greatly. And I'm not a student. And they accept people, as we all know. Like, I'm speaking to people here that understand this. Like, I feel like I'm trying to educate you. And of course, you know this. But just because you get accepted to a school with a disability, it doesn't mean that you can go to the library. It doesn't mean that you can get on the oval. It just means you're accepted. Oh, yes, you can come here, tick, tick, tick box. And that kid can't do all the things that they want to do. That's fine. We can't wave a magic wand. We can't make the world accessible. But we can, as allied health professionals and people that work alongside us, problem solve it. There's always a way around it. There's always moving classrooms downstairs, better wheelchairs, better, fighting for them, ringing the school, being there, not making the parent do it, like helping them do that. Because in the 80s and 90s when I was at school, of course it wasn't accessible. But see, back then, no one cared about risk. No one cared about public liability.
The risk management kind of overlay is certainly ramped up. Yeah.
And you know what? Like that also isn't actually true either, right? So, as you know, there's way more able-bodied people that have broken their legs at school than there are disabled people, but they're the first ones to say, oh, no, you can't play sport at school. That's fine. Yeah. But if you can fight on our behalf or find something that we can do outside of school, help us, then you become someone that we will talk about for the rest of our lives. I still talk about, my physio from when I was a child.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Yvonne Burns, and I remember all of my physios and OTs, people, because you change our lives. You don't realize what you can do for us. And even now, I would love to come along and say to any service provider and say, please take my NDIS package and help me because I need help. But we've all become quite, us against them. We don't know who to call. We don't know what to do. So if you can provide that service to us, then, oh my goodness, then everything becomes easier. And you guys, obviously become better as well because you're flourishing. And nobody becomes a social worker or an OT to be able to not be able to help. You don't feel good about yourself either if you go home at night and someone's been abusing you all day and you can't help them. I mean, of course, we all do this work because we want to make a difference, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Look, we could keep talking all day, and I'm just conscious that we probably need to wrap it up. But you've given us lots to think about, lots to reflect on. You've continued to help us maintain our focus on inclusion in society and not just services for NDIS participants, which, language is important. But look, thank you so much for joining me today, Karni. It has been wonderful to chat to another woman who's a social worker. On International Women's Day, it's important that we hear the stories from all different types of women with different experiences, and your lived experience as a child and even where you're at now. It's been really powerful and really great. And we should invite you along to some of the carnivals that we run. I think you'd enjoy that. I don't know if you can compete with the little ones, but it'd be great to share some of that with you. And we may well have jobs going for social workers. So if you're keen to work in the industry,
look, I'll apply. And look, I want to also say thank you to everyone that for everyone that's working in your organisation. I know it's a thankless job in so many ways. So from my perspective is that I've always been on a hunt for those, more hope givers and head nodders, because we just constantly get rejected and you don't realize the power in not doing that, saying, yes, great idea. You want to be a, Paralympic swimmer and you've got a muscle waist and this and you can't lift your arms above your head. That's a great idea. But also for International Women's Day too, we talk about gender pay gaps. We talk about parity. For females with a disability, we're again behind that again. And it's so important that we acknowledge that there are women with disabilities in this country right now that all they want to do is be safe, have a purpose, and also obviously be able to find that job, whether it's on the same pay gap or whatever. Right now, we just need a job. It's that simple for us, is that we desperately need to be accepted into all those organisations, university, TAFE, etc. But we would also love for able-bodied people in your organisation to fight alongside us or for us when we're not in the room. And this is what I think is really important, is that we're often not in the room. And also, we shouldn't have to be in every single room. We shouldn't have to be with all disability organisations or disability services. And that is, I constantly bring up, wherever I am, if I hear something, whichever room I'm in, about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people or, gay people, I'm neither of those things. I wish I was, but I'm not. I'll always make sure that I, go to Mardi Gras or make sure my voice is heard. And I don't think that's the same for people with disabilities. And I always say, if I'm getting kicked off a plane because I'm in a wheelchair, or I'm getting kicked off a Dreamworld ride, if able-bodied people stood up, even if one person said, no, this is weird, things would change.
Yeah, you're right. And that's where something that, as an able-bodied person, I think there's an opportunity for us to think about how each of us in every moment that we have our lives outside of work, right? Actually stand up for what is human rights and people's opportunity just to live a life in a world that is inclusive.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Karni.
I'm
going to have to wrap this up.
Today, but
you've probably got to do some important preparation around some weather events happening in the country at the moment as well.
Yes.
But no, look, it's been wonderful to chat to you, and I'm sure lots of our team will really take a lot out of hearing your story, and I hope you find an opportunity to celebrate and also reflect on International Women's Day and what it means for us, what it means for our community, and how we can all be the power of head nodding, which I feel like I've done a lot of head nodding, and I feel like maybe that's something I can do, right?
That's right. And also, I've got a muscle disease and I'm missing some muscle somewhere there, and I can still do this.
And you can still, there you go, the power of a head nod. But thank you so much, Karni, and you take care, and thank you everyone for listening.
Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.